Hey folks. As we know, we're in a bit of a weird set of circumstances right now. So as sort of part of that, there's been a few bits and pieces around the channel which have been going a bit differently. And I thought that being a bit of an off week from normal game review episodes of the show, I thought I'd take a bit of time to sit down and talk about some of that stuff. So this is just a bit of a channel update as we move into June. And along with that, I'm just going to also take time to answer some Patreon questions from my supporters of the channel. Some good ones there, so let's get on with it. So the first thing I really want to chat about is just the schedule. When I did the update at the start of the year, the plan was for Scanlines to be, as always, 2 game reviews a month that are heavily scripted, except for January and December when there'd only be 1. And then, of course, on months, May is an example where there was actually 5 weeks, I would put an extra, whether it be at the end of that month or the first week of the next month. So there wouldn't be 3 weeks between episodes. 2 weeks between an episode under normal circumstances was a good period of time for me, I think, to be able to do a good job in producing episodes, but also to give you as viewers, some breathing room. Now, obviously, with the circumstances of the present time, I personally have found myself having to work from home, and at the time of speaking, there's at least another month of that. And I think my employer, there are plans that they want to sort of do it on a more permanent long-term basis. So from that angle, I'm probably going to be doing that more often. And for me, honestly, for April and May, doing weekly episodes was actually, it's been good for me from a keeping busy and keeping my mind off some of the things that are part of this circumstance. And honestly, I have to admit my own mental health has been up and down a lot lately in the videos, and doing that has actually been very, very positive for me to try and keep on track of things. So the plan for me right now is to do weekly episodes in June. I have the next episode, which will be next weekend, is the look at the C64 driving games. The last part of that, which is a look at single screen races, I've grabbed most of the footage for that. Probably need to re-grab footage for 1 or 2 games. And I finished a script. I've just got to clean that up, edit it, record the video, put it all together. There's a couple of other episodes. I have ideas for the second extra for June and the second main review. There's a couple of things I'm floating about there. As for July, I think it's really going to be dependent on what happens with work. If I have to start occasionally going to the office, it's going to eat up a lot of time, unfortunately. But at the very least, worst case scenario, it's back to the classic formula of 2 scripted game reviews in the month. Now, to augment that, something else I've been getting back into, and it's kind of stuck at last, is streaming. I've tried to dabble with it at various points, but during this set of circumstances, I've found it sticky, and actually things have been actually going quite well now for small group, and it's gotten a bit of traction. And so usually twice a week, in my evenings, I'll sit down and stream stuff. It's not off original hardware. I'm mainly using Mister, which I've been really enjoying especially as I've had to pack a bunch of systems away, and a bunch are a little less accessible, and others which need repair. It's been really good on that. Check the links, and I'll fling it on screen if you do that. Now remember, like I said, it's evenings for me in Australia, which is usually very early morning in Europe, it's sort of getting towards the middle of the day in Europe, early morning in the US. So it's not a time that works for everyone. Unfortunately, I've got to be mindful that I do have a day job, and I've got to stick to that. And I can't, get up really early in the morning and stream there, or do weekends. I've still got to balance video creation. So one of the things I like about it, I like about doing it, is that it gives me a chance to cover games, expand on covering them that don't really work in a video. I did a stream where I was playing F1 GP Circuits, which is a game I really enjoyed looking at as part of the scrolling driving games video from the start of the month. It was really good to play that, sit down and run through the experience a bit better than the brief minute or so I could show playing it as part of a roundup video. And it gives me a chance to do games like that. And some of that stuff may fold, where appropriate, into actual scripted episodes. That'll be, it's me playing that game that then I can sit down and film and then do another recording run, write a script and put it all together properly. I have a lot of interest in working how to improve my streaming and capture pipeline for that reason. So that's really sort of the big things. So, I mean, to sum up, June will be weekly videos. July will likely be, and of course, streams twice a week. So there's a lot of stuff going on if you're interested in how the kinds of takes on old games, which I do. I really should start trying to archive a lot of the stream stuff. I clip highlights and stuff where appropriate, but I try to just do that. And of course, a lot of that has really been fed on by the actual community side of things. When I produce a video or I do a stream and I'm actually getting to chat with people, actually getting to discuss the mechanics and stuff in detail, and it feels less like talking into the void, that's the stuff I really enjoy about talking about these old games. I want to be able to share the experiences, highlight stuff, and hopefully get people inspired to want to check out new stuff, and even better, try to get back into using real hardware when they can. And so this is all sort of part of the discussion and stuff. And that's what I really enjoy. And it's my way of sharing that stuff, and hopefully, finding more like-minded peeps and being able to enjoy this in a good kind of positive, respectful discussion is something I really enjoy. And so that's really sort of where the state of the channel is. That's where at least the plan for the next few months. As things will change, if there's a pretty dramatic change, I'll probably sit down and film another video like this and fit it in as I can. So that's really the first part I wanted to talk about, just to let you all know what's going on and what you can expect at least over the next few weeks. And so the next big thing I wanted to do was I asked the channel patrons for some cues, because I haven't done this since I did an update video like last year, and I took some questions, and I thought it would be nice to take another pass at it. And so I've got notes on my iPad, so I'm looking down so I can read this out. The first of these comes from Matt, who's a really good supportive friend here, and he's asked, "What's one game that you've loved on an 80s home computer What's one game that you've loved on an 80s home computer that you'd never cover on the channel because you either don't deem it interesting enough or it's been done to death?" Now, this is actually a tough one, and there's a few here that I'd write down, but I think when I look at the list, the short list I wrote here, I was originally going to try and talk a bigger description, but I think deep down, I think it's got to be Impossible Mission, which is a groundbreaking game. It's a really tight game. It's excellently put together. It does a lot of really cool things, but to start with, I'm really terrible at it. I've only ever seen the end with cheats. And even then, the second thing is that I'm not sure I could actually add anything interesting to talk about. A lot of the point with Scanlines is whether I revisit stuff that is a little more well-known, I'm hopefully trying to talk about it from an interesting angle, to sort of, to bring that in. Or if I'm talking about lesser-known games, then of course it's always a case of which of these games are lesser-known and could actually, bring some discussion about to the table. Impossible Mission is awesome. It's a game I really enjoy, and I do rank really highly, and in fact, you should play it. But I'm not sure that I can add anything about it that hasn't already been said. Again, that's a personal thing. I mean, unless I were to... If I became an actual Impossible Mission master, which I know some people who are masters could probably teach me, I don't think I could really make a good video about it as a game, which is a shame. But I don't think it needs to be talked about. It's not a lesser-known game. It's great. It's exciting. And I think if it wasn't held in as regard that it was, then yeah, I probably would talk about it. But everyone already has. Unless I can think of something really cool to talk about from its context, then that person is probably not going to be me. Okay, and now for our next question. This comes from Ultra Steve, and it is, are there any systems that you still buy for, excluding modern games, despite having mass storage solutions for them? So realistically, one of the things that I talk about is that I try to collect on all the stuff I've got systems for. A large chunk of the reason for that is really the way I prepare myself to make episodes of Scanlines. I like having like a physical copy of the game with documentation and all of that stuff intact. And the primary reason for that is that I can sit down and play the game and learn how to play it properly. I can go through the documentation and understand the game, and I can learn it, and I can really do my best to show off how that game is played, how that game works. Pardon me. And why that game is very interesting. Now, this is something which has really grown out of experiences I've had as I've gotten back into the retro hobby seriously in the last, 7 or so years. Holy moly, it's been nearly 7 years since I started doing videos. And what I found is that there were games out there that I really wanted to play that I couldn't quite pick up from just playing normally. I couldn't pick them up through normal play, that I'd really needed documentation. But the documentation wasn't online, so I couldn't learn how to actually play that game properly. I mean, there are cases like, one of my favorite examples as a kid is that with Raid Over Moscow, I learned how to play that game without documentation. Like, I learnt the key codes the key presses to open the hangar door, to get out of the hangar and actually play the game. It really was something I didn't find that difficult. But having the documentation helps bring the context. I've actually, in years, I acquired a tape copy of the game, and the tape release from US Gold doesn't include the intro sequence. That's only on the disc version or the original access release. So seeing that, having the resources to run off modern kit for that is also good. I mean, there are also some games I've got that aren't properly dumped that I really should get around to dumping. Learning to use my CryoFlux and dumping those games to make sure that they're part of the common archives and preserved. I really need to do some more work on that front. I managed to get it working, but I couldn't dump it. I was trying to dump a C64 disc, and I wanted to do both sides, and I have a flippy modded drive, and it dumped it as one big G64 instead of doing it as two. That's sort of what I'm trying to get my head around. That's sort of that thing. But in terms of the machines themselves, I collect, a lot of my collecting is for the C64, but also the Spectrum and Amiga. They've got pretty sizable collections out of the micros. Stuff like the Apple II, my 2C is there, is a lot harder to collect for because it means I've got to import out of the US, and games tend to be really expensive, and US postage tends to be expensive. And that gets amplified a lot more of late with the present circumstances because I'm very wary of international mail at the moment. As an example, I pre-ordered some games, some modern games back in January. That from a physical release from boutique from the publisher. They were going to be released in March. March came up, they got sent. They took nearly 2 months to arrive. And I've been finding out for a lot of things where it's been taking 2 or more months for stuff to arrive. And a lot of the time without really good tracking. So I'm loath to want to try and collect a lot of stuff at the moment. I mean, so realistically, a lot of my collecting stuff has been local, and honestly, a lot of it's been around the Mega Drive. I've been able to get a bunch of games, pretty reasonable price. Sadly, despite the popularity of the C64, there's not a lot of pickings for C64 games in Oz at the moment. A lot of the stuff I want to get is likely stuff I have to get from out of the UK. It also stems into why I'm not doing a lot of modern games on the channel at the moment, because I like to have the physical copy, particularly to shoot the cover, the thumbnail photo. There's that sort of house style I'm going for with the show at the moment, and being able to do that from just a download doesn't quite feel as thrilling, at least in my heart. So at the moment, it is Mega Drive. That's where a lot of stuff is. I would love for the circumstances to improve and being able to order C64, Amiga, Spectrum, Atari, Apple, Beeb, MSX, all that stuff, OS, and bring it in. But I've got to do it in dribs and drabs. It's things are tough right now, so obviously I don't really get to do much of that as I'd like to do. And I think about as the world starts opening up again, I feel like the landscape's going to be changed quite permanently, and to the point where I don't know how things will function in the future. So it may be that I actually do start dwindling trying to get games physically, because a lot of what I want is really hard to get. And the second question Ultra Steve asks is, which one system would you love to own that you don't currently have? Now, it's a hard decision to talk about this because there are a few on my list. Some of those are basically white whales. Ultimately, I think if I was going to think about the one system I'd love to have, I think it's one of the ultimate classic computers, and that's a Sharp X68000. It's a beast of a machine. It's quite influential for a lot of Japanese home computer gaming, and a lot of that sort of influence seeps out elsewhere. And it's an amazing beast, but of course they're stupendously expensive to get at the best of times. For a laugh did a search, and you're looking at like $2,500 just for the tower, just for the base system, no keyboard, no mouse. And it's just like, ugh. And then of course you got to get step down, whether the step down already have is powerful enough, and then work out how to actually feed it into an upscaler or whatever, because no way I'm going to be ordering one of a multi-sig CRT from Japan. And so it's a machine I'd love to get. There's a lot of games I'd love to play on it and use as research, but honestly, I don't think that's ever going to be feasible. So I'm kind of really excited that there's a Mysticore for that, which is public but not quite ready, and hopefully will be ready soon. I look forward to playing the X68000 versions of a bunch of games in future. But yeah, I pretty much would love, that would be my white whale, but I consider it pretty much unobtainium for money reasons, quite frankly. It's a machine I'd love. Like, it's an amazing bit of kit, it's an amazing bit of industrial design, but the price of the thing just makes it unobtainium. You know, this is a secondary hobby, and I'd rather put the money I spend on the hobby towards games that I can cover on the channel, because that's more interesting for me, being able to play those games. If I can't really afford a machine and it's not easy to set up a mass storage solution, or mass storage solution is going to be pricey as well, you can sort of see where I'm going. That was really involved. That was really cool. I got some really cool questions there. So thanks to Matt and Ultra Steve for sending those through. If you want to support the channel, there's a link in the description. It's, $1 a month gets you early access most of the time to videos and some other bits and pieces, and a little bit more, and you get a recommended viewing list each month, which is really just a bunch of retro videos that I really enjoyed, that were really insightful to watch, and I think you might like too. But as always, if you enjoyed the video, do leave a thumbs up. It means a lot. Also tell your friends. Word of mouth really is important in terms of just getting more eyes on this stuff. And I'll be back next week with the final part of the C64 Driving Games Roundup video, which I really enjoy putting together. And I will hopefully make some more plans for that in future. As always, thank you all very much for watching, and I will see you next time.